Do you know what time it is? It is that day of your life where you have to check the calendar and the clock and YouTube, because if you don't have notifications on, you might miss the TLF. What does that stand for?
That stands for Tier List Friday, my man, because we are knee-deep into Mythic. Well, we're actually 3 days into Mythic, depending on when you watch this video.
Logs.
We don't actually have any logs for Mythic rating, because obviously the top guilds that are Mythic rating right now, they're probably vying for that top 100 Hall of Fame or race the world first. Yeah. So they're not gonna just show their cards, right? But that's besides the point, because we still have heroic logs and we're gonna check them. And how we're gonna check them again?
We're gonna check them, but first we have to tell the people how we're gonna check them and what we're gonna check. It's melee DPS, baby, in the Sanctum of Domination. And we're gonna look at heroic logs, basically, look at their performance, and big disclaimer here. You're gonna see some things that will probably hurt your feelings. Yeah. But again, what is the purpose of this video is to actually see in maybe a month or two from now, how will things change? But currently, based on the people that have logged their heroic fights, we'll take a look and rank these specs based on that.
And you can play your spec to the best of its ability with the proper add-ons. And the best way to get the proper add-ons is through the CurseForge app, which we've been using for a long time. And the app is amazing. You can update all of your add-ons with just one click. There are constant updates to the application itself.
And it always has this improvement fixes, like on a weekly basis, super fast. Plus, CurseForge is sponsoring Echo. You know, we get into that race world first, and you can see all of the Echo players add-ons directly through the CurseForge app. And you can check our add-ons within the link in the description. And everything you will see in most of the videos is going to be there on the list. So thank you, CurseForge client, for helping us with the content. And now let's check out Arms Warrior. Is it, baby?
Arms Warrior is turning heads right now. It's surprising a lot of people, because Fury was supposed to be the best at the end of Nathria. But right now, Arms is, we're gonna look at the logs in a little bit. First, we don't want to spoil what the ranking of the specs are. Yeah. But Arms is actually doing a little bit better. And I think maybe the major reason for that is that we have a lot of cleave fights. There are
that
ads,
is true. That is true.
But if you think about it, on the most important bosses, there's like 2, maybe 3 very important targets, and the rest are like kind of okay. That's good if you hit them. But so that's why I think Arms is doing really good. And right now, I think it's pretty high up there.
Yeah, the raid definitely has some cleavage. No, but seriously, yeah, you can see like the race to world first, and you can see a lot of the teams actually rostering lots of Arms Warriors. Well, that's because a lot of the utility, you know, because Battle Shout.
Yeah, you definitely want it in here.
But cleave is something that is definitely predominant here, and you can see that some classes from some melee specs actually that can do better in cleave situations will be better represented as well. So I would say right now, based on the data, we have to put Arms in a A tier.
It's A tier. Right now, it's very high. I don't think it was an A tier.
It wasn't in Castle Nathria.
It might have been at the very beginning of Castle Nathria, but then it dropped off for the rest of the raid.
Started coming back. Again, guys, this is based on data and logs. This is not based on what we think or what you think is, basically the logs that have been posted today. Tomorrow, the logs might change completely. So just take it with a grain of salt.
This is the fun part. And speaking about fun, man, how the tables have turned for Assassination.
I mean, come on, man. Assassination was decent enough in Nathria too, but it took it a while to get there. I would say Assassination has been projected as one of the best melees in Sanctum of Domination, and I was expecting Sub to be there as well, but Sub needs a little bit more time to get those daggers, but we'll get to that. As Assassination being quite a simple spec and single target, it does do better in cleave when compared to Sub. Although I'm really surprised that it's outperforming Outlaw in the same cleave department, but we'll talk more about Outlaw on when we get to it as well. But so far, Assassination is SS tier.
Has so many S's in it, it's like 4 S's, it has to be S tier. It's doing really good. It's like I said before, it's kind of like the melee Affliction Warlock, and even though Affliction has been nerfed, Assassination is going really good. And there are downtimes for a couple of bosses, so having those dots up are
that's one of the main things. When you have to do mechanics with Assassination, you have your bleeds all up in there, you know, hopefully, you know, with a little bit of buffs going on there, maybe some Vendettas, maybe, I don't know, some from Vanish, who knows? But if your deeds are ticking, you're good. Well, I'll do mechanics. Now, Next up,
let's talk about something that's surprisingly good, and that's Enhancement Shaman. Again, it's weird. Not really, although the difference between my previous main and my current main is pretty big, but we're gonna get to that eventually. Enhancement right now is performing around B tier. Now, not a lot of things changed to Enhancement from Nathria to Sanctum. It was never particularly bad. But I think maybe one of the most reasons that obviously Enhancement is being used in Race World first, but I think it's mostly because of Wind Fury, which is both for good, melees, good and bad. Well, I mean, I think
there are a lot of melees in the comms, to be honest, man. That's the thing. If you look at Race the World first too.
See, there's also another thing. We have Lego, one of our Patreon, who's also Mythic rating as Havoc. And he said that there's a build that actually is enabled by Wind Fury, which hasn't happened in a very long time. And obviously, Wind Fury is going to be good for a lot of other melees, but so far in Shadowlands it has been very, very, very good with Havoc Demon Hunter. And Havoc Demon Hunter, you'll see, it's pretty good this year.
It is good, but definitely in the B tier for now, and it's not that bad. I would say B tier is definitely
it has damage.
And but I want to stress this once again: all the melee specs can do well in Heroic, Sanctum of Domination, and even in Mythic. So don't take this as, okay, I have to play this in order to be good. You can be good at any spec, just master it, okay? Now, let's move along to a masterful spec indeed, the Feral Druid, which was my main in the Castle Nathria, and I'm happy to see it doing so well. It's like really, really close. It was really, really close to being an S tier for melees. But no surprise, as it did really, really well in Castle Nathria, being a single target beast and also having decent cleave. Not the biggest AoE powerhouse, but in terms of cleave, really, really good. And as opposed to Assassination, because again, we're talking about a bleed spec here, Feral Druid. Feral Druid still has its, I would say, reminiscence of snapshotting, and this is really advantageous because if you snapshot bleeds before you do mechanics, then those blades were probably going to do more damage than, let's say, the poisons and bleeds from an assassination.
I was about to say that a lot of people like to call Feral the budget assassination, and it's not necessarily the budget assassination, although from one very crude perspective, it can be. I mean, it has dot damage and it's good against one target, but that's kind of where it stops.
Yeah, listen, there is no comparison between Assassination and Feral in terms of the depth of the spec. I mean, I can play Assassination with my eyes closed, no offense, it's really fun, I like it that way, it's easy, you know, I can enjoy the game and do the mechanics or whatever. Feral implies a little bit more to it, okay? You can get to that point, but being a budget assassination rogue in terms of DPS, but not even that.
Yeah, in terms of DPS, we can debate complexity of the spec, but Feral has been doing good since week 1, and now in week 2, I was kind of hoping that things would shake up a lot, but it seems like Feral is still
second best melee.
And it's obviously we're looking at the melee now, but Feral is contesting with the top ranged as well, so that's obviously Assassination too.
All right, now let's check out the Frost Death Knight.
Frost Death Knight, currently based on the logs, which we'll show every now and again on the video, it's doing a little bit better than Enhancement, but not by too much.
Yeah, I mean,
it's Frost is good. Frost has damage, and it has been data mined and theory crafted to have a lot more, let's say, presence in Sanctum than in Nathria.
Castle Nathria.
It's with the whole. We're not gonna go into the anti-magic zone because obviously it was nerfed and it was buffed again, and you can get a Frost Decay or an Unholy for AMZ. You can get a Blood Decay, but that's not the point. The point is that the damage is there. And there are bosses so far that we have seen that have like a prolonged phase where you can just do Breath of Sindragosa. Not all of them are like that, unfortunately, but the ones that do have intermission seem to be a little bit more forgiving for mechanics like Breath of Sindragosa, where you just really cannot afford to move out. Yeah. And even if you do have to move out, Obliteration is also another option that you can go for, which is pretty good. I mean, people like.
Yeah, for sure. It's still good. Again, we'll have to see how all of these melees will look in 2 months from now, 1 or 2 months. Well, let's check out Mr. Fury Warrior, who surprise, man. The projections for Fury were actually, you know, top.
I thought so too. I thought Fury Warrior was definitely gonna be around A tier, S tier, and obviously it's kind of not.
No,
don't burn us. Don't bring the pitchforks. But it's currently C tier. Now, the one disclaimer that I want to make is probably it's C tier because so many good warriors are probably gonna play arms. At least for the beginning part of the raid tier. I don't know if that's gonna change, but arms is definitely what you might want progressing. Although Fury could probably be better when you farm stuff. So because there's a big discrepancy between how many good warriors play arms versus how many good warriors play fury, because obviously there's still good furies out there. That's probably why there's a difference, because fury is probably better than C tier. I think it's probably at least B tier. But if we're gonna look at the logs, we're gonna look at the logs, and so far the logs and the rankings kind of put fury a little bit, a smidge down.
It's a good point you made. Probably the fury mains that you've seen maybe at the end of Castle Nathria are now playing arms just because of the cleave capability. And progression, as Flame mentioned, is quite of the most important thing right now for a lot of the guilds. But I'm sure, like, as we get further and further into the season, we'll see a lot of switcheroos from arms to fury, just because, you know, everybody has that gear up, and, you know, things will change up. But for now, C tier for fury, really sorry, just based on the logs and stuff. All right, let's check out Demon Hunter.
Demon Hunter. Wow. Now, if you look at the race to world first, you would think Havoc Demon Hunter is going to be higher than middle A tier right now, which Feral is just a smidge better than Havoc, but I honestly think that over the course of the race here, the Havoc is very likely to overtake Feral as well.
Probably.
We'll see how that actually turns out, but there's no surprise that Havoc is doing really good. It has received a lot of buffs coming into 9.1. It's a lot. I think it has about 2 to 3 builds, if I recall, and they're all very close to each other. So that's a big plus to people who want to have a little bit of versatility when it comes to one type of mechanic or another type of mechanic. Some builds can be good on one boss, other builds on another boss. So that's always really good.
Yeah, and Havoc is one of those melee specs that, you know, has, especially in this raid, it has huge advantage because of its mobility. Of course, it does not have the advantage of actually having shit on targets once it has to do something, but it can get back into the happenings really fast, right? And it can also actually enable damage through momentum because of that. So there's a lot of things happening for Havoc, and I'm actually happy because, you know, it has been a spec that maybe we trashed too much.
Has gone through the BFA grinder and came out a better spec in Shadowlands.
Yeah, definitely happy for him, and a well-deserved place nevertheless. Now let's look a little bit at the Outlaw rogues, which are doing decent, but it's more or less as expected for this raid, because when we did, you know, research for sub and assassination for 9.1 and talking to the Ravenhold boys, the projection for Outlaw in the raid always was somewhere in the middle pack of the melees. You would be surprised by that, because out of all of the 3 specs, Outlaw is the biggest cleave boy. But I think the performance in single target for the other 2 specs is just, you know, too much, and Outlaw doesn't really shine. It does good single target damage, but its main avenue is the cleave, is the AoE, and for this it will be a B tier, I would say.
It's still better than these two, I think.
It's better than Frost and Enhancement for sure, but that doesn't mean it sucks. I mean, Outlaw is super fun to play. I can definitely recommend it 100%. But if you really want that you know, min-max damage, you just want to be in front, then, you know, you have to choose between Assassination and Sub.
Even when you do have cleave, you still have like targets that are a little bit more important. And priority damage is good because that helps you transition, and you might fight fewer adds. And so also you might need less. Plus, on bosses like the Eye and the 9, there are like 2 or 3 targets that are really good, and usually Assassination is probably going to be way better on that.
Yeah, that's the thing, but still very good. Now let's check out our favorite boy of all time, Red Paladin, baby, which has received nerf to its legendary.
Start off by putting it here.
Yeah, it's in front of the B tier for sure, and the performance is great. I've seen it also in I think in Echo's roster, and I think Limit 2.
I forgot which one they had, but I knew somebody was using at least one Red Paladin.
Yes, and it's crazy burst damage. I think we can have the same argument as in Castle Nathria. You know, having access to that 1 minute burst is super good for progression. And although their Kyrian legendary was nerfed, if I'm not mistaken,
I still saw people using it.
They still use it, but it's still really good, and it's still pumping numbers. I know in our guild we had a Red Paladin, and at least at the beginning phase of the fight, you know, the burst was insane. So you need that oomph, you know, and if you can have access to it, you know, on a 1 minute basis, it's really good. Now, after the, you know, quote-unquote minute burst, depends on how good you are, you know, how good your Red Paladin is, you know, on a little bit of
the holy power management and how you're dealing with mechanics.
But overall, good.
Yeah, it's really good. It's nice to see it up there because there are not a lot of mechanics that will have you like zigzag around and kind of punish you for it. There are a few, but if you can manage those, then it's not as bad. I feel like maybe Nathria was a little bit more difficult for Red than
I think so, yeah. Like. Now doing you know, 8 out of the 10 bosses, I can definitely see that, you know, the mobility issue is not really that big of an issue. Of course, it can be better, but is not as punishing as you mentioned as Castle Nathria.
It's funny that you said 8 out of 10, but Sylvanas is kind of notorious.
I know.
It's gonna be a pain, at least for me, and we're gonna get to that in a second. But we're gonna get to you right now.
Yeah, Subtlety Rogue. So Subtlety Rogue, from what I've tested so far and seen on the logs, there's not many logs of Subtlety just yet because there's still this assassination thing going. Although I do believe Sub Rogue will take the cake eventually. They just need to get those Sylvanas daggers. I think by now people have their obedience. Well, Assassination have their obedience too. The Vented Legendary. The thing about Assassination, man, it finally got touched, right? It got buffed in almost all departments. But the biggest one, and I think not a lot of people talked about it, was with the shadow techniques, and basically that, just to not make it overly geeky, explain it, that basically will let you have more shadow dances up. Plus, the new legendary Obedience will grant you access to Flagellation, not Flatulation, Flagellation. Don't give me those. They said that I say Flatulation. And it will give you access to it much faster. Overall, the high mobility, the fast access to birds, shadow dance, symbols of death. Really, really good. Not the best in Cleave, okay, probably the worst in Cleave, but definitely a strong A tier. And after I played it and I've seen the logs and stuff, definitely a strong A tier. I'm waiting for it, more things to happen.
Yeah, but now we actually go to my main, which is Survival Hunter, and because it's more funnier to do it this way, we're gonna first put it into its respective tier list.
Yeah,
this is my main. This is my favorite class in the game. This is my favorite spec. It's there. I'm so sorry.
Okay, but
it is there.
let's just say this: there's not a lot of logs on Survival.
There's not a lot of logs.
Dude, you were topping DPS at least in at least 3 of the bosses yesterday.
So some stars aligned, and whenever I don't get to do mechanics, it's very punishing. Especially the pure single target build is very punishing if I'm out of the melee, because the purpose of survival right now to get competitive damage, not top damage, competitive damage, is to maintain coordinate assault for ideally more than a minute and a half. A minute and a half, I think it was the most that I was able to get.
A minute and a half.
But you won't be able to do that if you have to like take shit out or keep the goddamn fragments at the 9 for like 20 seconds without getting dispelled.
I know, man.
But even with the top logs, as I have been looking at the survival logs compared to everybody else who was doing heroic, survival is still lacking behind everybody else. It can do damage and is definitely good enough damage to clear heroic. Obviously, there are people who are going to be clearing mythic with survival anyway, like there is always, so that's not a problem unless you're going for Hall of Fame, top 100 or race world first. You're gonna be fine with survival as well, but you will a little bit feel, if you're gonna be playing against equal level players, you will feel like your DPS is just not up there.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see how Mandel start playing Mythic and on survival to see how things look up. But anyways, moving up to the Unholy Death Knight, which Unholy, I mean, I would say in similar terms as Frost, AMZ or not, is still looking pretty good, especially within those fights. And man, I cannot not think about the Fate Scribe with the ads, because our Unholy Decay on that particular phase, it just blew up.
It's with the epidemic blows. It's been good. I mean, that's why it was really so good on Sardonathrius as well, because Unholies would just melt the ads in the first phase. They seem to have done a pretty good job at keeping Unholy and Frost kind of similar in terms of performance.
Yeah, actually,
even this week and last week when we looked at the logs, they were very close to each other. So if you like DK and you want to do damage, you can pick either one of the two. They're all slightly a little bit different. Maybe Unholy is a little bit more forgiving when it comes to mechanics, but Frost is probably a little bit easier to play in general. So it's down up to you and up to your preference, but you're going to be good with both. And likely they're still going to be very solid DPS even by the end of the tier. So might even become A tier, but we'll see.
Well, we'll definitely see. And now, for me, the biggest surprise coming from
me too.
Castle Nathria, Windwalker Monks. And it's interesting because performance-wise right now in heroic logs, it doesn't look to be that good. But if you look at the world first rosters,
it's number one constant. Yeah, that's what I'm confusing, because I know there was this trend that started a couple of months ago that Windwalker doesn't scale well with gear, or at least as well as other specs. And this is where the scaling term kind of became a little bit controversial in the theory crafting community, and we've been trying to kind of like not use it as much, because Windwalker is still a very solid raid DPS. I was convinced that Windwalker is going to be up there with Assassination as one of the best. It's very mobile. it's probably the best windwalkers in the world. Yeah, probably the best windwalkers are in the world right now are probably rating mythic with it. So we don't have a lot of good logs. This is just
how
heroic.
Things will change once we get those mythic logs.
Oh my god! I think in a few weeks we're gonna have a whole different situation. But this is kind of how the tier list is looking right now. Like we said, guys, this is just looking at the logs today at the recording. By the time you actually see this video and a few days afterwards, the logs will probably change, of course. But this is the fun part. Like, see how ridiculous they look now and how it changed. And we really want to point out how ridiculous the meta concept is when you try to decide what to play. It doesn't really matter unless you're in the top 1% of the players. Because otherwise you can just play whatever you want if you're good enough.
Yeah, man, and basically we just like doing these videos because we have fun doing it, especially now where we can see some fucked up shit, you know, within the logs, and then wait to see how things will change, right? So it's fun making.
Yeah, it's fucked up to see survival in DT. We should fix that.
Come on, it should be at the very least, you know, just something entertaining for you guys to see. Because this is, again, not all players log their fights, right? This is strictly heroic, and you can 100% be sure these positions will change once mythic logs go in. Just take your organization, and please don't take any decision based on these types of videos, okay? It's purely for fun, entertainment purposes. Yeah, we take logs, we take data, but that's not always the most 100% trustworthy source to rank specs, I would say.
So. But you know what else is 100% trustworthy source? The love of our Patreons. Thank you so much for supporting our channel and everything that we do, from the class guys to the tier list to the WoW news to the podcast to the streams and everything that we do here. We really appreciate it. You guys make a lot of this possible, and we are super stoked that you guys like our content. We're definitely gonna keep bringing it in.
Pump it in.
Hustle.
Pump it in. And hey, you. If you didn't join the Patreon team by now, you can check the link in the description and see if you like anything you see over there, some nice perks or whatever, and join them that way. But thank you for watching the video. Cheers. And have a great Saturday and Sunday ahead.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.